The golden light of late summer painted the Montana sky as the Hendricks family loaded their well-worn Chevrolet Suburban with camping gear, fishing equipment, and enough supplies for what they hoped would be a memorable week exploring the wilderness areas near Yellowstone National Park. For Mark Hendricks, a 41-year-old high school biology teacher from Billings, this annual camping trip represented more than just a vacation. It was his chance to share his passion for nature with his children and create the kind of family memories that would last a lifetime. Mark's wife, Jennifer, 38, worked as a nurse at Billings Clinic and had initially been reluctant to spend their vacation camping rather than visiting family in Colorado. However, she had come to appreciate these outdoor adventures as valuable opportunities for their family to disconnect from the busy schedules that dominated their lives during the school year. Their children, 12-year-old Emma and 9-year-old Tyler, had inherited their father's love of the outdoors and looked forward to these trips all year long. The Hendricks family lived in a comfortable 2-story house in the Heights area of Billings, where Mark had built an impressive collection of camping and fishing gear in their garage. He was known among colleagues at West High School as meticulous in his preparation for outdoor activities, often spending weeks researching locations, weather patterns, and safety protocols before family trips. His biology students enjoyed his stories about wildlife encounters and often sought his advice about their own outdoor adventures. Jennifer brought a practical perspective to their camping expeditions, ensuring that first aid supplies were adequate, that emergency communication plans were in place, and that their children understood safety protocols for hiking, swimming, and wildlife encounters. As a pediatric nurse, she was particularly conscious of the risks that outdoor activities could pose to children and insisted on thorough preparation and constant supervision during their adventures. Emma was an honor student who shared her father's interest in biology and environmental science. She kept detailed journals of their family trips, documenting wildlife sightings, plant identification, and weather observations that she planned to use for school science projects. Her teachers at Billings Middle School often commented on her maturity and responsibility, qualities that made her parents comfortable including her in more challenging outdoor activities. Tyler, though younger, was remarkably skilled at outdoor activities for his age. He could tie knots, identify animal tracks, and had learned to cast a fishing line with impressive accuracy. Mark often joked that Tyler had been born with fishing in his blood, as the boy seemed to have an intuitive understanding of where fish were likely to be found and what techniques would be most successful. If you enjoy real mysteries like this one, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any cases. On August 20th, 2000, the family departed Billings at 6 in the morning, driving south toward the Yellowstone River Valley, where they planned to establish a base camp near the town of Columbus. Their destination was a remote area along the river where Mark had discovered excellent fishing spots during a solo scouting trip the previous spring. The location offered a combination of established campgrounds with basic facilities and access to more primitive areas for families who wanted to experience true wilderness camping. The drive took approximately 2 hours through some of Montana's most spectacular scenery, with the Beartooth Mountains visible in the distance and golden wheat fields stretching to the horizon. The family stopped for breakfast at a truck stop in Laurel, where the waitress, Dorothy Mason, later remembered them as a happy, well-prepared family who seemed excited about their camping adventure. Mark had asked detailed questions about current conditions along the Yellowstone River and had mentioned their plans to spend several days fishing and exploring the area. They arrived at the Itchketpee Park campground near Columbus around 10:30 in the morning and registered for a campsite for 7 nights. The park ranger on duty, Thomas Yellowbird, a member of the Crow Nation who had worked at the park for 15 years, later recalled the Hendricks family as experienced campers who had proper equipment and seemed knowledgeable about safety protocols. Mark had asked about current river conditions, recent wildlife activity, and the best locations for family fishing. The family set up their camp in Site 23, a location that offered both privacy and easy access to the river. Their campsite was equipped with a picnic table, fire ring, and access to restrooms and potable water, but was far enough from the main camping area to provide the quiet, natural experience that Mark preferred for his family. Neighboring campers later reported seeing the family throughout the day on August 20th, with the children playing near the river under close parental supervision while Mark and Jennifer organized their gear. That evening, the Hendricks family was observed by several other campers preparing dinner over their campfire and planning the next day's activities. Mark had spread topographic maps on their picnic table and was pointing out potential hiking trails and fishing spots to his wife and children. The family appeared relaxed and happy, with no indication of any problems or concerns about their safety or plans. On the morning of August 21st, the family was seen leaving their campsite around 8 o'clock, carrying day packs, fishing equipment, and what appeared to be lunch supplies. Mark had informed the camp host, retired rancher Bill Thompson, that they planned to explore a section of the Yellowstone River approximately 5 miles upstream from the campground, where he had heard reports of excellent trout fishing in areas that were accessible by hiking trail. The family's plan, as described to other campers and the camp host, was to hike along an established trail that followed the river for approximately 3 miles, then cross to the opposite bank using a shallow ford that was popular with fishermen. They intended to spend the day fishing, exploring, and enjoying a picnic lunch before returning to their campsite by late afternoon. Mark had estimated that the round trip would take 6 to 8 hours, depending on how successful their fishing efforts were and how much time they spent exploring. Several other outdoor enthusiasts were in the area that day, including a group of fly fishermen from Bozeman and a family from Wyoming who were camping at a different location along the river. Multiple witnesses reported seeing the Hendricks family during the morning hours, hiking along the established trail and appearing to be in good spirits. The last confirmed sighting was around 11:30 a.m., when a fisherman named Robert Chen observed the family near the river crossing, with the children playing in shallow water while their parents prepared fishing equipment. When the Hendricks family failed to return to their campsite that evening, other campers initially weren't concerned. Fishing expeditions often extended later than planned, especially when the fish were biting well or when families became absorbed in exploring interesting areas. However, when their absence continued past 10 o'clock that night, and especially when their camping gear remained untouched the following morning, the camp host contacted the Stillwater County Sheriff's Office. The initial response was swift and comprehensive. Sheriff's Deputy Maria Santos, who specialized in search and rescue operations, arrived at the campground within an hour and began interviewing witnesses and examining the family's abandoned campsite. The Hendricks tent, camping equipment, and personal belongings were exactly as they had left them, with no signs of hasty departure or disturbance. Their Suburban was parked in its designated spot with the keys hidden in a magnetic box under the rear bumper, as Mark had told other campers he always did during camping trips. A preliminary search was organized for August 22nd, involving sheriff's deputies, park rangers, and local search and rescue volunteers familiar with the terrain along the Yellowstone River. The search began at the campground and followed the established trail that the Hendricks family had taken the previous morning. Search dogs were brought in and successfully picked up the family's scent along the main trail for approximately 4 miles, before losing it near the river crossing where they had last been seen. The search area encompassed a challenging mix of terrain, including dense riparian forest, steep riverbanks, rocky outcroppings, and fast-flowing water that could be dangerous even for experienced swimmers. The Yellowstone River in this area was known for its unpredictable currents, hidden obstacles, and water temperatures that remained cold even during summer months. Even experienced outdoorsmen treated the river with respect and caution. Several potentially significant clues emerged during the first week of searching. A child's baseball cap, later identified by Jennifer's sister as belonging to Tyler, was found approximately 6 miles downstream from where the family had last been seen. The cap was caught in debris along the riverbank and showed signs of having been in the water for an extended period. However, the discovery raised more questions than it answered, as the location was much farther downstream than the family should have traveled according to their stated plans. More disturbing was the discovery of what appeared to be a hastily abandoned fishing tackle box wedged between rocks near the river crossing. The tackle box contained expensive lures and equipment consistent with what Mark Hendricks would have carried, though definitive identification was difficult due to water damage and the common nature of such equipment. The location of the tackle box suggested that something had happened at or near the river crossing, possibly involving the fast-moving water. Search teams also discovered tire tracks near an unofficial river access point, approximately 2 miles from where the family had been camping. The tracks appeared recent and didn't match the Hendricks family's Suburban or any of the other registered campers' vehicles. However, the area was used by local fishermen and hunters, so the tracks might not have been related to the family's disappearance. The organized search continued for 12 days, involving over 80 volunteers at its peak, including professional search and rescue teams from multiple counties, National Guard personnel, and experienced local outdoorsmen who donated their time and expertise. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras surveyed the river valley and surrounding mountains, while teams with boats searched the Yellowstone River downstream for many miles, checking every possible location where bodies might have been trapped or deposited. The river search was particularly challenging due to the Yellowstone's reputation for concealing evidence of drowning victims. The river's powerful currents, rocky bottom, and numerous deep pools created conditions where bodies could be trapped underwater for extended periods or carried many miles downstream before surfacing. Local law enforcement had experience with river drownings and understood that victims might not be found for weeks or even months after incidents occurred. On September 2nd, the active search was officially suspended due to approaching winter weather and the exhaustion of available resources. Sheriff James Morrison assured the extended Hendricks family that the case would remain open and that any new evidence would trigger renewed search efforts. The decision was difficult but necessary, given the vast area involved and the realistic limitations of what volunteer searchers could accomplish in increasingly dangerous conditions. The Hendricks family's disappearance sent shockwaves through their community in Billings and throughout Montana. Mark was beloved by his students and colleagues at West High School, where he had taught for 16 years and had coached the school's environmental science team to multiple state championships. Jennifer was respected by her colleagues at Billings Clinic, particularly for her work with pediatric patients and their families during medical crises. The couple's parents, siblings, and extended family members struggled to comprehend how an entire family could simply vanish without a trace. Mark's father, retired rancher Donald Hendricks, organized private search efforts and hired investigators to continue looking for answers when official searches were suspended. Jennifer's mother, retired teacher Margaret Wilson, established a reward fund and maintained constant communication with law enforcement agencies throughout Montana and neighboring states. The children's absence was particularly devastating for their school communities. Emma's teachers at Billings Middle School described her as an exceptional student with unlimited potential, while Tyler's elementary school classmates and teachers struggled to understand why their friend had disappeared. Memorial services were held at both schools, but the absence of bodies or definitive answers about the family's fate made the grieving process particularly difficult. The investigation revealed several disturbing aspects that hadn't been apparent during the initial search efforts. Interviews with other campers and local residents disclosed reports of suspicious activity in the area during the weeks leading up to the Hendricks family's disappearance. Several witnesses mentioned seeing individuals who didn't appear to be typical campers or fishermen, including men who had been observed watching other families and asking detailed questions about camping locations and schedules. Local law enforcement also discovered that the area along the Yellowstone River had been used by methamphetamine manufacturers who took advantage of the remote location and access to water for their illegal operations. While no active drug labs were found in the immediate vicinity of the family's disappearance, the possibility that the Hendricks had accidentally encountered criminal activity added a sinister dimension to what had initially been treated as a possible drowning or hiking accident. More troubling were reports from area residents about strange lights and unusual activity near the river during the night of August 21st, when the family had failed to return to their campsite. Several people reported hearing what sounded like vehicles operating in areas where motorized access was prohibited, and others mentioned seeing flashlights or headlights in locations that were supposedly wilderness areas. The psychological impact on the extended Hendricks and Wilson families was devastating and long-lasting. Without bodies to bury or definitive answers about what had happened, family members found themselves trapped in a state of ambiguous loss that prevented normal grieving processes. Some family members maintained hope that Mark, Jennifer, Emma, and Tyler might somehow have survived and would eventually be found, while others struggled with the likelihood that their loved ones had died under circumstances that might never be fully understood. Donald Hendricks, Mark's 72-year-old father, spent his retirement savings on private investigators and search efforts, refusing to accept that his son's family had simply vanished. He learned to read topographic maps, studied river dynamics, and became an expert on search and rescue techniques in his desperate quest for answers. His wife, Mary Hendricks, dealt with the stress by maintaining the family's traditions and keeping Mark's childhood bedroom exactly as he had left it, as if he might return at any time. Jennifer's parents faced similar challenges, compounded by their distance from the search efforts and their unfamiliarity with the Montana wilderness where their daughter had disappeared. Margaret Wilson, a retired English teacher, channeled her grief into writing letters to law enforcement agencies, media outlets, and political leaders, advocating for improved search and rescue resources and better coordination between agencies handling missing person cases in remote areas. The financial burden of maintaining search efforts and dealing with the disappearance created additional stress for both families. Private investigators charged substantial fees, and family members felt obligated to contribute to continued search efforts, even when they couldn't afford to do so. The costs of traveling to Montana for search activities, maintaining communication with law enforcement, and dealing with legal issues related to the missing family's affairs accumulated over time. Insurance complications, similar to those faced by other families of missing persons, added another layer of difficulty. Without death certificates or definitive proof of death, insurance companies were reluctant to process claims, leaving family members responsible for ongoing financial obligations, including mortgage payments, car loans, and other debts that had been in Mark and Jennifer's names. As years passed without resolution, several theories emerged to explain the family's disappearance. The most widely accepted theory among search and rescue professionals was that the family had suffered a drowning accident while crossing or fishing near the Yellowstone River. The river's powerful currents and cold water temperatures could quickly overwhelm even experienced swimmers, and the recovery of Tyler's baseball cap downstream supported this theory. However, the absence of additional bodies or equipment raised questions about a simple drowning scenario. Experienced river rescue specialists noted that drowning victims in the Yellowstone River were usually recovered within days or weeks of incidents, and the failure to find any trace of 4 people suggested that either the bodies had been carried much farther downstream than typical, or that something else had happened to the family. A more sinister theory focused on the possibility that the family had encountered individuals involved in illegal activities and had been harmed to prevent them from reporting what they had seen. The presence of drug manufacturing operations in remote areas throughout Montana created potential for violent encounters between criminals and innocent outdoor enthusiasts who accidentally discovered illegal activities. Some investigators speculated that the family might have been victims of a robbery or assault that had escalated beyond the perpetrator's original intentions. Mark and Jennifer carried valuable camping and fishing equipment, and their credit cards and cash might have made them attractive targets for criminals who knew their location and schedule. The most disturbing theory suggested that the family had been deliberately targeted by individuals who had observed their camping patterns and had planned their abduction or murder for reasons that remained unclear. This theory was supported by reports of suspicious individuals in the area and by the complete absence of any trace of 4 people who had been properly equipped and experienced in outdoor activities. Over the following decades, advances in technology provided new tools for investigating the cold case. Improved GPS systems allowed investigators to create detailed maps of the search area and identify locations that might have been missed during original efforts. Satellite imagery became more accessible and detailed, enabling virtual searches of terrain that was difficult or dangerous to access on foot. Ground-penetrating radar technology was used sporadically to investigate areas where witnesses had reported suspicious activity or where geographical features might have concealed burial sites. However, the vast area involved and the varied terrain limited the effectiveness of these efforts, and no significant discoveries resulted from technological searches. DNA databases expanded significantly during the 2000s and 2010s, offering hope that unidentified remains discovered elsewhere might eventually be linked to the Hendricks family. Samples from family members were collected and entered into national databases, and investigators periodically reviewed unidentified remains cases from throughout the western United States. The case attracted periodic media attention, including coverage on national television programs specializing in unsolved mysteries. These programs generated numerous tips from viewers, including individuals who claimed to have seen the family after their disappearance and others who reported suspicious activity in remote areas of Montana and neighboring states. While most tips proved to be cases of mistaken identity or unrelated incidents, investigators followed up on all credible leads. Cold case reviews were conducted regularly, with fresh investigators examining all available evidence and exploring new theories about what might have happened to the Hendricks family. These reviews often coincided with advances in forensic technology or changes in law enforcement personnel that brought new perspectives to the investigation. In 2015, a significant development occurred when construction workers building a new bridge across the Yellowstone River discovered human remains in a location approximately 30 miles downstream from where the family had disappeared. Initial reports suggested the remains might belong to one or more members of the Hendricks family, generating intense media coverage and renewed hope for answers. However, forensic analysis revealed that the remains belonged to a different individual, a transient who had apparently drowned several years after the Hendricks family's disappearance. While this discovery didn't provide answers about the family's fate, it demonstrated the river's ability to conceal evidence for extended periods and renewed investigative interest in river-related searches. The breakthrough that investigators and family members had hoped for came on June 14, 2022, 22 years after the disappearance, when 12-year-old camping enthusiast Jake Morrison was exploring along the Yellowstone River with his father approximately 15 miles downstream from where the Hendricks family had last been seen. Jake, who was participating in a youth conservation program that involved documenting beaver activity along the river, noticed something unusual about a large beaver dam that had been constructed in a backwater area near the main channel. While photographing the dam for his project, he observed what appeared to be artificial materials woven into the structure that seemed inconsistent with the natural materials typically used by beavers. Upon closer examination, Jake and his father discovered that the beaver dam contained several items of human origin, including pieces of fabric, plastic materials, and most significantly, what appeared to be children's shoes that had been incorporated into the dam's construction. The items were deeply embedded in the structure and had clearly been there for many years, preserved by the dam's construction and the cold water temperatures. Jake's father, an experienced outdoorsman who was familiar with the Hendricks case, immediately contacted law enforcement. Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks personnel, and Stillwater County Sheriff's deputies responded to the scene and carefully documented the discovery before attempting to extract the items from the beaver dam. The extraction process was complex and required the assistance of wildlife biologists who understood beaver behavior and dam construction. The dam had to be partially dismantled in a way that minimized environmental impact while preserving any potential evidence. The operation took several days and involved multiple agencies working together to ensure that all materials were properly collected and documented. Forensic analysis of the recovered items provided the first definitive evidence of the Hendricks family's fate in over 2 decades. The children's shoes were positively identified as belonging to Emma and Tyler Hendricks through comparison with family photographs and detailed descriptions provided by relatives. DNA analysis of biological material found on the shoes confirmed the identification and established that the children had been in the water where the beaver dam was eventually constructed. Additional items recovered from the dam included fragments of adult clothing, pieces of fishing equipment consistent with what Mark Hendricks had been carrying, and personal items that family members recognized as belonging to Jennifer. The discovery location was significant because it was much farther downstream than original search efforts had extended, in an area that had been considered unlikely for recovery of evidence. The beaver dam itself provided important clues about the timeline of events. Wildlife biologists determined that the dam had been constructed gradually over a period of 15 to 20 years, with the human-made materials being incorporated during the early stages of construction. This suggested that the Hendricks family's belongings had been in the water for approximately the entire period since their disappearance. Water flow analysis and historical weather data indicated that the items had likely entered the water somewhere upstream and had been carried by river currents to the location where the beaver dam was eventually built. The specific location and the way the materials were distributed suggested that the family had entered the water as a group, rather than in separate incidents spread over time. The discovery prompted a renewed investigation involving multiple law enforcement agencies and forensic specialists, with access to modern analytical techniques that hadn't been available in 2000. The investigation team included experts in river dynamics, forensic anthropology, and criminal profiling who brought new perspectives to the evidence. Advanced DNA analysis of materials recovered from the beaver dam revealed trace evidence of blood on several items, confirming that at least some family members had sustained injuries before or during their entry into the water. However, the degraded condition of the evidence made it impossible to determine whether the injuries had been caused by accident, violence, or the river environment itself. The renewed investigation also benefited from improved databases and communication systems that allowed investigators to cross-reference the case with similar incidents throughout the region. Several patterns emerged that suggested the Hendricks family's disappearance might have been part of a series of crimes targeting outdoor enthusiasts in remote areas during the late 1990s and early 2000s. Interviews with surviving witnesses and new residents of the area revealed additional information that hadn't been available during the original investigation. Several people recalled suspicious activities and individuals in the region during the summer of 2000, including reports of men who had been asking detailed questions about camping families and their schedules. The case attracted renewed media attention following the Beaver Dam discovery, including coverage on national television programs and social media platforms that reached millions of viewers. This publicity generated dozens of new tips from individuals who claimed to have information about the family's disappearance or about suspicious activities in remote areas of Montana during the relevant time period. One particularly significant lead came from a former law enforcement officer who had retired to Florida, but remembered investigating suspicious activity in the Yellowstone River area during the summer of 2000. The officer recalled reports of individuals who had been camping in unauthorized areas and had left sites unusually clean, as if they were trying to eliminate evidence of their presence. The Hendricks family members experienced complex emotions following the Beaver Dam discovery. While they were relieved to finally have concrete evidence of their loved one's fate, the confirmation that Mark, Jennifer, Emma, and Tyler had died was devastating. The family had maintained hope for over 2 decades that their relatives might somehow have survived, and the definitive proof of death required them to confront grief that had been suspended for 22 years. Donald Hendricks, now in his 90s and in declining health, expressed gratitude that he had lived long enough to learn what had happened to his son's family. However, he also expressed frustration that the discovery had come so late and that those responsible for his family's death might never be identified or prosecuted. Margaret Wilson, Jennifer's mother, had died 3 years before the Beaver Dam discovery, never knowing what had happened to her daughter and grandchildren. Other family members felt that her death had been particularly tragic because she had spent her final years wondering and hoping for answers that came too late. The discovery of evidence in the Beaver Dam raised important questions about search and rescue protocols and the challenges of finding evidence in river environments. The location where the items were found had been outside the original search area, highlighting the difficulty of predicting where river currents might carry evidence over extended periods. The case prompted discussions about improving coordination between law enforcement agencies and wildlife management organizations, as the Beaver Dam discovery demonstrated how natural processes could preserve evidence in unexpected ways. Training programs were developed to help searchers understand how wildlife behavior might affect evidence recovery in missing person cases. The investigation remains active today, with law enforcement agencies continuing to pursue leads related to the criminal aspects of the case. While the discovery in the Beaver Dam provided confirmation of the family's death, it also raised new questions about the circumstances that led to their entry into the river, and whether they had been victims of violence. The Hendricks family's story serves as a reminder of the potential dangers that exist in even the most beautiful natural environments, and the importance of remaining vigilant while enjoying outdoor activities. Their tragic fate also demonstrates the persistence required in missing person investigations and the unexpected ways that evidence can be preserved and eventually discovered. Today, a memorial plaque at the Itchkep Park campground honors the memory of Mark, Jennifer, Emma, and Tyler Hendricks, serving as a tribute to their love of the outdoors and a reminder to other families about the importance of safety while exploring Montana's wilderness areas. The plaque also acknowledges the dedication of the many searchers and investigators who worked tirelessly to find answers about their disappearance. The family's legacy continues through scholarship funds established in their memory and through the improved search and rescue protocols that resulted from lessons learned during the investigation. Their story remains a powerful reminder that while nature offers incredible beauty and opportunities for family bonding, it also demands respect, preparation, and constant awareness of potential dangers.